Hotter and hotter, climate change wreaks havoc on water supply and the overall global economy. Weekend Business Report starts right now. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Keneal Gale. Thanks for spending some of your weekend with us. No matter where you are in the world, the effects of climate change are touching your life in some way. In a bit, we're taking a closer look at some of the fallout in Europe this summer. But before we get into that, here are some of the top stories from the BATV News Desk. As Jamaica celebrated its 56th year of independence last Monday, the country's leaders spoke about the nation's achievements and the challenges. Prime Minister Andrew Holness reiterated his administration's commitment to good governance, while Leader of the Opposition Dr. Peter Phillips called for policy reform to address squatting, wages and the educational system. Jamila Maitland has more.
As customary in their Independence Day messages, the country's leaders highlighted several Jamaicans who are representing brand Jamaica on a global stage. However, in pointing out the country's achievements, they also acknowledged the challenges that continue to hinder progress. Prime Minister Andrew Holness spoke about the crime monster.
It must concern us all that for a country often romanticized as a no-problem paradise, violence is becoming part of the narrative surrounding our brand and image. Our independence theme, One Love, One Family, aligns with the country's motto, Out of Many One People, and captures our friendly, kind, and compassionate character for which we are renowned. More than this, it gets to the heart of one area of national life in which we have not used our freedom and independence for great advance, and that is the area of the family.
Meanwhile, opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips, while acknowledging the many professionals, artists, athletes, farmers, and business people who have contributed to Jamaica's development, pointed out some of the challenges that still persist, challenges which he said required urgent and collective action.
Today, there is still too much corruption, too much waste of taxpayers' resources, and too many breaches of public trust by people in positions of power.
The opposition leader argued that there needs to be policy reform to address squatting, wages, and what he describes as an apartheid educational system.
Too many Jamaicans still live payday to payday under the stress of low wages as prices continue to rise. We need a massive expansion of small and medium-sized businesses to grow a vibrant economy with Jamaicans running successful enterprises and workers earning a decent living while their rights are protected.
In the meantime, as controversy continues to swirl around the energy, science, and technology portfolio, once headed by Dr. Andrew Wheatley, the Prime Minister noted that his administration is committed to building a public sector with integrity. He emphasized the importance of public accountability in an effort to achieve good governance.
It is admittedly a complex issue, but not an impossible task. Already, Jamaica is ranked 5th in the ease of starting a business. It can be done. My administration is committed to increasing efficiency through public sector reform and building a strong governance framework strengthened by mechanisms to eliminate corruption. The challenge for the next 50 years is to use our political independence and social freedoms to achieve economic independence and prosperity.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness is continuing his review of boards from the Ministry of Science and Technology as well as the Energy Ministry. The Office of the Prime Minister says it is maintaining oversight of the Science and Technology Ministry for at least 2 weeks while he reviews the board's systems and procedures. In his address to board members of the relevant entities on Thursday, Prime Minister Holness thanked them for their service to Jamaica. He also stressed the importance of all boards functioning and transparency, probity and accountability.
It is also expected that the organization will implement government policy. So, policy that is established and policy that is developed. And your role as a director is to ensure that the organization runs according to policy set and that the policies are implemented with faithfulness and alacrity.
The Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, is to spend over $1 billion on climate-smart projects in the Caribbean over the next 5 years. They are doing this through the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator, a partnership with the World Bank, CARICOM, the Virgin Group, and others. Siobhan Keyes was at Thursday's launch.
This coalition has brought on board 26 Caribbean countries as they push towards making the Caribbean the world's first climate-smart zone. The accelerator is seen as an entrepreneurial engine to help fast-track the progress with funding. IDB President Luis Alberto Moreno says over the next 5 years they will be investing over $1 billion to this program and 8 countries after disasters.
The IDB are ready to play our part. We plan to boost our investments in climate-smart projects in this region to over $1 billion over the next 5 years. And about half of those resources will support contingent credit lines to provide countries immediate support after major natural disasters.
He says a number of programs will benefit from the accelerator as they wish to invest more in climate-proof infrastructure.
We're looking at opportunities to invest more in climate-proof infrastructure, renewable energies, and energy efficiency, along with sustainable agriculture and tourism. All these projects will no doubt profit from the accelerator. The IDB Group will therefore invest $3 million in the accelerator over the next 3 years, starting today with $1.5 million.
CARICOM Chairman Prime Minister Andrew Holness says this is the largest partnership of its kind in the Caribbean. He says based on international climate change agreements, climate action requires more partnership and financing. However, there are factors retarding necessary investments.
Paris Climate Agreement calls for unprecedented public and private investment in climate action. Now, what does unprecedented mean? It means that we can no longer think in billions, but trillions of dollars to be invested in climate-smart action. Day-to-day structures of global governance put artificial speed limits in the way of investments, both in terms of the scale and size and the speed of the investment that is needed.
Moving on now, this summer's wild weather has been making headlines in Europe and around the world, with drastic consequences from the extreme heat and torrential rain in countries including Greece, Portugal, and Japan. Meanwhile, Britain has witnessed the longest spell of summer sun for decades. But is the summer heat wave and record temperatures across the globe a coincidence, or is it climate change to blame? What is the actual impact of increasing heat? ITV News' science editor Tom Clark explains exactly how our climate is changing and why one of the world's worst offenders for emissions is undermining the global effort to protect future generations.
They're among the most dramatic images of this scorching summer. Wildfires in Greece, a collapsed dam in Laos caused by torrential rainfall, forest fires in Sweden burning inside the Arctic Circle, and a natural disaster declared in Japan amid record 41-degree heat. This summer of extreme weather has caused untold death and destruction around the world, which puts our own heatwave at home into some perspective. Yet this sweltering summer has been remarkable, with comparisons drawn to Britain's longest sustained heatwave in 1976. But have a look at this map. Back then, the UK's record heatwave, which saw 15 consecutive days over 32 degrees C, was largely at odds with the rest of the world. Now temperature records are being broken across the globe, from North America to North Africa, Central Europe to Australia. Coincidence? Climatologists say it's odds on not to be.
We can think of the chances of extreme weather like having a roll of a dice, and we can think of a heat wave as though you've thrown a 6. But what we're looking at here now is a situation where, if you like, we've rolled 6 repeatedly across the globe in this particular summer. And you can't just keep looking at that roll of the dice and thinking this is just chance. The data is really showing us now that this is climate change, it's linked to greenhouse gas emissions, the world is warming.
Now take a look at this history of heat. It's a widescreen view of our climate in graphic detail. Each stripe is the average yearly temperature for central England from 1772 to the present. It's colour-coded, cool in blue, warm in red. It shows from left to right how the centuries of variable weather has been replaced in recent years by consistent red lines of warmth. and it's in keeping with the global trend. 9 of the warmest 10 years on record have all occurred since 2005. 2016, 2015 and 2017 are the top 3, and 2018 looks like it has every chance of joining them. So what this changing climate is doing, just as scientists predicted, is to make these weather events, be it sun, snow, wind or rain, more and more extreme. That extra degree of temperature, that extra inch of rainfall has devastating effects. What's the impact of extreme heat? Well, let's look at Britain first. It may not have been built for the heat, as any rail traveller will tell you, but many have had fun in the extended sun this summer, and yet the impact of continued high temperatures is really quite severe. For the very young, the elderly, or those with underlying health conditions, it can be fatal. There are currently around 2,000 hot weather deaths in the UK. The Committee on Climate Change fears that'll rise to 7,000 by the 2050s. Our industries are having to dramatically change, and none more so than agriculture. This summer's heatwave starved some regions of rain for more than 50 days in a row. Livestock are being relocated at high cost to conserve water. And farmers are under huge pressure to rethink what crops they can grow, along with when and where, because Britain's stable maritime climate simply can't be relied upon like it was. But wealthy countries like ours can consider themselves fortunate. It's the poorest that are at most threat from the rising heat and yet hold the least resources to plan ahead. The World Health Organization predicts between 2030 and 2050, 250,000 people will die from malnutrition due to crop failures or drought, malaria and heat stress. And then there's the melting of the polar ice caps. Rising sea levels are of grave concern, particularly when more than half of the world's population live within 40 miles of the sea. Can anything be done about it, or is it too late? We know the global temperature rise can't be reversed. If we stop producing all greenhouse gases now, temperatures would continue to rise for some time and take millennia to go back down again. However, it might not be too late to stop temperatures rising beyond dangerous levels if those in power act. That's why efforts like the Paris Agreement are so important. Its central aim is to limit the average global air temperature rise by 2 degrees centigrade. Its most important measures commit nations to cutting emissions and legislating on renewable energy. And the great news is, every country in the world has signed up to it, with one notable exception.
We're getting out.
Donald Trump has demanded new terms more favourable to American businesses to recommit the US to the global effort to curb emissions. And as one of the worst offenders for greenhouse gases, the world simply can't afford to go it alone without America. Otherwise, the wild weather that has really become all too familiar will only get more extreme.
Company news comes up next, then later, recycling plastic isn't as easy as it should be. We'll tell you how some manufacturers are making it difficult for those trying to save the environment. More WBR after this break. Welcome back to Weekend Business Report. Here's this week's company news.
Honeybun is reporting that for the 3-month period ending June 30, 2018, sales increased 15%, amounting to $332 million. The company says this resulted from continued investment in production capacity and the restructuring of its distribution. Profit before tax was $9 million, a 5% increase over the corresponding period last year. Meanwhile, year-to-date sales for the 9-month period were $1 billion, representing a 4% increase in sales relative to the corresponding period in 2017. The company's asset base has also grown as a result of the investment in the expanded facilities. This investment, Honeybun says, will allow it to take advantage of the strong market demand for its products. In April of this year, Honeybun launched its new Buccaneer Jamaica pocket-sized rum cakes in 3 flavors at the Jamaica Expo. The company is also noting that it entered 2 new markets and there is further interest from buyers in existing markets. The separate group has recorded more than $10 billion in revenues for the first half of 2018. That's an increase of $2.1 billion compared to the same period last year. The household family brand is attributing this to the acquisition of Ness's operations, which included brands such as Supligen and Betty, as well as other products from the international market. The Nestle brands have been operated by separate under a management services contract since 2017 and were not previously included in the group's results. Meanwhile, the company says the major focus for the rest of the year will be to improve employee engagement, maximize synergies in the dairy operations, and complete the acquisition of the Facey Consumer Division, a food and pharmaceutical distributor renowned for Swizzle, Brunswick, and Surge products. Local bottler and distributor of Pepsi, Pepsi-Cola Jamaica, is launching a new product. The product, Pepsi Kick, is expected to be officially released at the end of the year. Brand manager for carbonated beverages at Pepsi Jamaica, Elizabeth Allen, says the company is thrilled to release the product in the Jamaican market, especially after its successes in Mexico and Europe. The production cost for the new line is expected to be $10 million or 1.35 billion Jamaican dollars. In addition to the product, the company says it plans to expand the cola market by adding new flavors and new types of drinks. They are also looking to gravitate towards distributing non-carbonated drinks by November in an effort to support the government's campaign to reduce sugar intake among Jamaicans.
Let's now take a look at the closing numbers from the major stock markets around the world. When we come back, more of the week's top stories from the BATV News Desk, so stay with us. Welcome back to Weekend Business Report. More news now. The Office of the Prime Minister OPM says asphalt production has been normalized at Petrojam. Reports are that the state-owned oil refinery which manufactures asphalt has had to turn away customers because of machinery maintenance issues. Jamila Maitland tells us more.
The OPM says adequate asphalt is now available for purchase at Petrojam. But earlier this year, when opposition spokesman on energy Philip Paulwell had warned of the possible shortage, the government had denied the statements, calling them false. 2.5 months later, they're now admitting that there was indeed a shortage. However, they're blaming it on issues affecting maintenance operations. Petrojam's new general manager, Winston Watson, says the refinery was shut down for routine maintenance since April. However, during the period, additional maintenance work was required, which extended the downtime, resulting in supply challenge on the asphalt market. He points out that the refinery shuts down for routine and special maintenance activities annually, and when this happens, the company largely supplies the market with asphalt through importation. But just last week, the opposition accused the government of poor planning for the asphalt shortage, citing that they were well aware of the effects which caused several delays in construction and other road completion works being carried out by the National Works Agency and the National Water Commission. In the meantime, Wednesday's press release from the Office of the Prime Minister on behalf of Petrojam said the company was experiencing challenges in sourcing the commodity on the international market. Petrojam has since apologized to customers for the delay that occurred while the process unit was offline. The state-owned oil refinery went on to say that the process unit is now fully operational, producing 1,000 barrels of asphalt daily.
CEO of Proven Management Christopher Williams says by the end of 2018, its subsidiary Proven Realty will be breaking ground to develop an apartment complex on Braemar Avenue in Kingston. He made the announcement during the company's annual general meeting on Wednesday. Sashana Small was there.
The Proven CEO says the company is taking advantage of the lower interest rates available and the stability of the Jamaican economy by expanding its real estate portfolio.
We have acquired the the property where the original Red Bones is at the top of Braemar Avenue, and we intend to put some apartments at that location. We consider that location extremely prime, and we're happy that we're able to put that property in our portfolio.
The apartment complex will have 80 units, which will include super studios and 2-bedroom apartments. Mr. Williams says the units will be attractively priced.
We expect to keep the price range affordable because, it's 80 units, so, it's volume. So we want to keep the price down. As you saw what we did with Kingsway and with Sullivan, those were attractively priced to move. And that's what we're going to be doing again.
He says the company will engage in marketing campaigns that target the diaspora.
We are getting a number of inquiries and purchasers from the diaspora, which demonstrates, two things. One, it demonstrates the stability of Jamaica and therefore makes it more attractive for individuals.
In the meantime, he says proven management, which made profits totaling $1.8 million for the first quarter, will be focusing on consolidating its businesses for this year.
We now have a very strong base of businesses. And so what we're looking to do is to find cost inefficiencies across that base and eliminate them. And so that's job one. That's job one. Job two continues to be acquisition.
There is still uncertainty about when the rehabilitation of the Cornwall Regional Hospital will be finished. Chairman of the Oversight Committee, Professor Archibald McDonald, says he's not sure the August 29 deadline will be met. The chairman was speaking at the Ministry of Health's update press briefing on the Western Hospital recently. Jamila Maitland reports.
Earlier this year, Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says the issues affecting the Cornwall Regional Hospital would be resolved and the hospital reopened by the end of 2018. But Chairman of the Oversight Committee, Professor Archibald McDonald, says after further inspections, the problem has become more complex with issues far surpassing the mold concerns. He says there are no concerns about the design and the structure of the building.
First of all, there's a hospital which has been neglected for, it's very clear to me, for a long period of time. My first visit to the basement tells a story. It is a dungeon that has existed for a long, long time. So let us not pretend that these problems are new. They are not new. That is the first thing. The second thing, a hospital is a very complicated entity. It's not like building a house where you put up the structure, you put in the kitchen, and it is far more problematic than that.
It is for this reason that Professor McDonald believes the completion of the renovation may take longer than originally anticipated.
I want to make it clear that any timeline which is given is an approximation. It's an approximation, right? But one thing I can assure you, I will assure you that when this project is finished, the mold problem will be solved, the air quality issues will be solved, and as Professor Kawa indicated, the hospital will be a better hospital than it was.
When we come back, manufacturers being asked to play their part to make recycling plastics easier. We'll tell you more after this break. Welcome back to Weekend Business Report. 2/3 of plastic food pots, tubs, and trays bought by households cannot be recycled. Manufacturers are therefore being urged to scrap some of the plastics they use to package foods. Here's more.
It's a routine observed around the country, separating out your rubbish to do your bits for the environment. But a lot of what we think is being reused actually ends up as landfill. The mixture of plastics in packaging like ready meal trays make them difficult to recycle. Veolia handles waste for many of our councils.
Black plastic's hard to identify because we use machines firing light at the plastics to collect them, and black doesn't reflect any light. And these polystyrene type yoghurt pots, they're very thin, no one wants to buy them. If there's no end market, we can't recycle them.
The local government association found that more than 500,000 tonnes of plastic is used by households in the UK every year, but less than 170,000 tonnes of that can be recycled.
That's shocking. It means we've been dumping a whole lot of items into the environment.
I don't think of the colour or what colour they are. If they're washed up and put in there, they should be recycled. Yes, definitely.
The government says recycling rates are rising and it'll set out a strategy to make further progress later this year. Councils say it's clear where changes should come from.
There are options that food manufacturers should be using, plastics that are easier to recycle, that would make absolutely no difference to the longevity of food.
Representatives of the plastic industry argue manufacturers could be rewarded or charged, depending on the quality of their packaging.
If I decided I still want my really complicated, not very recyclable pack, and I thought it gave me a marketing benefit or a sales benefit, maybe I just have to accept the cost of paying more money because I don't want to change to a sustainable pack.
There's a growing awareness of the extent of plastic pollution and its impact on our planet. And now too a greater pressure to ensure that more of our pots, tubs and trays are not thrown away but can be used again. Tom Sheldrick, ITV News.
And that's our show for this week. On behalf of the entire Weekend Business Report team, I'm Keneal. See you next time.